Allah says that Sharia prohibits the marriage of under...
Jalalain was written by two people.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant I've got you.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, no, and it was actually it's an exegesis. It's not a book of law.
Yeah.
So it's important with these masail or these matters for it to go to.
Sharia is exegesis. It's not written in actual words.
No.
In the Quran.
The way no. So Sharia law is from the Quran and Sunnah, ijma, etc. Ijma meaning the consensus.
By saying, well, God forbids this, so we will say if you do this.
No. All right. So the books of Islamic law usually stipulate what are the do's and don'ts in Islam. Sometimes mufassirs can also contribute to that discussion, but it's not most fluidly elucidated in those books.
And what if it contradicts the Quran?
The point, okay, what I'm saying is that the way in which jurists, from an Islamic perspective, they come to conclusion is they look at the Quran, and within the Quran they look at the verses which are not abrogated, and the ones which are clear versus the ones which are not clear. If there's specific verses, when there's general ones or whatever.
I hold you to one specific verse which says that which we have allowed,
yeah,
no man shall
I'm coming.
forbid.
But just so you know the framework.
Yeah.
Then you have the hadith.
Yeah.
So after the Quran is the Sahih hadith. Then you have different gradations of hadith. So Hasan li ghayrihi, da'if.
Are those included in the contribution towards Sharia, the Hassan?
Yeah. So that is contributed towards understanding of Sharia. And then after that you have ijma'. Ijma' is basically the consensus of the scholars.
Right. So the scholars are important in their.
So how they?
Said that's scholarly.
Yeah. So when we say consensus, is that when they all come together, when they all, no, not the majority. Some describe it as a majority. Everyone. In language, it actually means everyone.
No, because of all the scholars, there's never going to be agreement among all of them.
Well, that's
yeah. Climate scientists say such and such, but that's not all of them.
I understand. That's a really good point you're making, and I tend to agree with the sentiment. But there's some things, folks. But there's one thing that I was going to say was that there's some. No, I wasn't talking about climate change. I'm not a scientist in that. Yeah. But so with ijma', with consensus. There's a discussion on it, but the point is this: is that there are some things which are definitely consensus.
Right.
For example, the five prayers a day, yeah, or Hajj. Hajj is in the Quran.
That is. Yeah.
So, for example, the 5 prayers a day. By the way,
doesn't it say in the morning and the evening and the middle? So that's only 3 in my counting.
Yeah, but the 5 prayers by name and so on, and specifics are not in the Quran.
Can we get back to that which is forbidden?
But you need to get the framework first, right? So
how long because
when people say Sharia law, they're talking about what's gone through that framework.
Yes.
Now, invariably,
if it doesn't match the Quran, I would suggest that Sharia is in error in the Muslim.
Well, yeah, that's obviously, but the point is that the ones who make that decision are scholars amongst themselves,
they're
right?
Just human.
Yeah. So they all come to conclusions and so on.
Yep.
They have the exegetical schools. They try their best to come to their conclusion and so on.
Yep.
So now that we've got that out of the way, the question of now marrying. So what is a nikah? A nikah in Arabic language is a kind of aqd, which means it's a kind of agreement.
Yes, like a contract.
Yeah. So the scholars of old, they asked the question: is it possible for someone to have an aqd nikah, which is this agreement to marry, without having consummation or full rights? So, for example, this is where the discussion comes.
Sorry, without having
so
you can't consummate something that doesn't exist. Do you mean can they have get married after they've already?
No. So, for example, the question is, can 2 people have this nikah agreement?
Marriage without any.
So basically, that person's. It works
like a platonic marriage.
No, it just works like an engagement.
Okay.
So the scholars differed on this matter. Yeah, some scholars said, you can have it. So, for example, in the olden days, say for example, I had a child, I had a daughter or something. Yeah.
Within wedlock.
Pardon?
Within a marriage.
No, let's say I had a 5-year-old daughter.
But I'm saying within a marriage context. Your wife had.
I had a daughter. Yeah. Let's say a 5-year-old daughter, and I say, well, I've got cancer, or I'm going to go to war, and I think I'm going to die, and so on.
Yep.
So, some scholars said, okay, look, I can draft a nikah agreement between my daughter, who's 5, and a man who's, let's say, 20 years old, but there's no sexual thing that happens. Yeah.
Or would it eventually become that when she
So
the baby?
when does it happen? Now the scholars discuss this. They say, for example, Ash-Shawkani says this is not allowed. Ibn Uthaymeen of our present time says this is not allowed. But some scholars of the madhahib said they're allowed. So I said that these contracts are allowed. That, for example, if they get to a certain age, let's say 12, 13, 14, whatever age of ability, they call it qudra, which is ability. Pardon?
Ability for what?
Ability
to accept
ability to have intercourse.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Does that include emotional or like is it just physical?
Primarily it's physical, but it does include psychological and mental as well. Because if someone is not of mental age, or they haven't got the ability to, or they're judged by the people, their seniors to not be mature for marriage, then surely they wouldn't be put in that position. Okay.
So what I'd ask is if Sharia forbids marriage, even in maybe 3 of the 5 schools, or if there's any prohibition on marrying a girl before her menstrual cycle begins, yet the Quran says this we find permissible and no man will forbid.
Now, what the Quran talks about is divorce, right?
Yes.
So if someone has, the verse you're talking about.
I don't know what you reference.
No, I don't know about Abbas. I'm sorry, I can't follow different. I can only tell you.
That's what I brought to you.
No, all right. So in chapter 66 of the Quran, وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ, which means that the ones who have not menstruated yet.
Yeah. Says
all right. So let's say that means that they've never had menstruation. Not that they're pregnant, or which it could also mean.
Menstrual.
Yeah, it could. Let's say it means.
Yeah, menstruate means they can't be pregnant. They're
no. Let's say that's correct.
You're talking about the first and the third category.
No. By the way, some mufassirs have said this means pregnant women.
And they're already included in the.
Yeah, fine. But what I'm saying is, let's take your interpretation, or the interpretation of some of the scholars as well.
Most of them, I would imagine.
Not really, because
it says all those who are pregnant.
Fine.
They can't be the same group of people being discussed. It says women who are pregnant.
Yeah.
Or women who are too old to menstruate.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. So the ones who have not had menstruation yet. So here, this would refer to prepubescence.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this question of prepubescent marriage, you're correct. Is it prepubescence with intercourse or not? Now, here's what I'm saying is that this can't be, because it's haram. I'll tell you why it's haram.
Is it, so that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah. So I'll give you some references and sources right now. If the woman, you can go. No, go. I don't even think they're in English, so I'll tell you and you can check it out. For example, Kitab al-Insaf, written by al-Mirdawi, who is seen as the final opinion of the Hanbali madhab, in his Kitab al-Hudud.
Most of that was in Arabic. I'm just going to go with all right then.
Yeah. He says, he lists in what he called a chapter of Hudud, which is punishments.
Chapter of what? Sharia
punishments.
Jurisprudence.
Chapter of punishment.
Chapter from the Quran.
No. I'm telling you what the scholars have said, and I'm going to give you.
Chapter of what I'm asking you? Chapter of Sharia.
Yeah. It's a Sharia book. Yeah, or Sharia law. Yeah. It's what I'm saying is the final opinion. It's seen as the final opinion of one of the schools of thought, the Hanbali school. 4. He says. No.
So there's
now Sunni, and then you have other schools within the Shia. Sunni, there's 4 mainstream ones. Yeah. Now, having said that, what he says is that if someone has intercourse in marriage with someone who's a prepubescent, the question is not whether they're doing the right or wrong thing. The question is whether they should be flogged or not, whether they should be whipped or not. And he was saying that they should be whipped.
So it's still prohibited, they're just now questioning what's the appropriate
Yeah, so in other words, according to Al-Mirdawi...
So I would come back to how can they prohibit something which the Quran says...
No, but the Quran never talks about... Sorry to cut you off. No, I know the verse off by heart, right? Yeah. And I can recite the whole surah off by heart. But here's what I'm saying is that from the beginning of that surah, it doesn't say sexual intercourse.
I appreciate that, but marriage, I would say a consensus of opinion is that marriage includes betrothal. Like you were saying, if you betroth your daughter and you feel that you're going to say eventually, can you take me to wife? For the moment, can you be a protector, companion, maybe parent figure?
What's your name again?
Hyde.
I don't shake hands with women now. No, not even. You know this already.
Do I?
Yeah, anyways.
Study you.
No, you've been here.
Just the Bible.
But here's what I was going to say to you, right? As I said to you before, in Islam, there are these distinctions. Now you're saying in culture.
The Quran should supersede them.
The Quran doesn't. Listen, very clearly. The Quran never says that nikah yaqtadi al-jima', which means it never says.
Is it a generic verse? Is it saying anything the Quran ordains as acceptable?
Look,
we forbid that.
Let me say this one more time.
We grow.
I just need to make this very. I want to make this very clear for you, right? I've said to you before that this nikah agreement, according to Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, he wrote a book called Al-Mughni, and the chapter is Bab al-Nikah. He mentions that nikah is like aqd, which means any agreement, any business agreement, any deal. Now here's what I'm saying to you is that the scholars of old, they debated on whether or not it's possible. Say if I got a daughter, I can.
That's betrothal, though, is my
right.
It's
but
not marriage.
Whatever. But
marriage ceremony.
the point.
Saying, can you please?
Yeah. No. How? This is the question. Now, what if she gets to the age and she says, "I don't want to get married. I don't want it." Now, one other scholar, he says, if she gets to the age of discernment,
Yep.
and she gets to the age of ability, and she doesn't want to be with this person who her father suited her with, then she can reject it based on the hadith. Al-bikru tusta'dhan, based on the hadith that the virgin has to be asked for permission before marriage takes place. So how do they do jama'? Shawkani says that the way he does jama' between the hadith, or he puts them together, and the ayah and so on and so forth in the Quran, is that he says that, okay, you can have a nikah, technically, with someone who hasn't reached the age of the discernment yet when she gets to the age, she can decide whether or not, number one. Number two, that he can't have sex with her until she gets to the age of ability.
So with arranged marriage, how would that work?
No, that's different. Arranged marriage is consensual from both sides. So just your question on chapter 66 verse 5. What I was saying is, even if we take your interpretation as the only interpretation, which it isn't, there is more than one interpretation. No problem. Let's take your one as the correct one. So the one of, she's never had puberty before. They've never had it before, and it's a strong opinion, in my opinion. Yeah, because it says lem. Lem is usually Arabic for in the past. Yeah, no problem. You're right. Now the question is, does that mean that there had to be a marriage of sexual?
No.
Right. So fine. So what's the issue?
For divorce in Western law, at least, there needs to be consummation to need it.
But the Quran says.
If I get married
sorry.
and my husband can prove that we have not consummated the marriage, he can just negate or annul
but here's
the marriage.
good.
But my other question is,
is
it a generic verse in the Quran that says that which we find permissible, you will not forbid?
The Quran also says that if you divorce your wives and you never touched them before, which makes it possible that you can divorce someone that you haven't had sex with.
But is 65:4 speaking
Pardon?
about that? Is the verse? Is
No.
65:4
Chapter 60. What? Chapter 66, not 65. Sorry, 65. Sorry. Surah Al-Talaq is 65. So chapter 65, verse 4. What it talks about is that it says it's a generic verse, right? Generic verse. Agreed.
Well, it's all women of this category.
Yes,
There
you have it.
Yeah.
Now, so we say that's a generic verse. The only thing that can do ikhtisas of it is of something which is a specifier. So there's two specifiers the scholars use. One, the fact that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if we take the hadith of 6 to 9, that he waited because he married at 6 and then he consummated at 9. So for that waiting period to take place.
This is a divorce.
No. Can you give me the evidence? Give me the evidence. Okay. If you don't give me the evidence, then I'm going to have to apologize to the camera. Because you know what I'm going to say to you, my friend, yeah? Sorry, what's your name? Okay, whatever your name is, yeah? I'm going to tell you something. Such a hadith does not exist in the literature, and you've lied. So he said that he does foreplay from 6 to 9. I'm going to say to you right now, I'm going to humiliate you right now. Yeah, you're humiliated already. You know why? Because you've mentioned something that does not exist in the literature. I'm putting my own reputation on the line right now by saying that such a thing does not exist in even one hadith in any of the 42 main books of hadith. 42, not even just the 6, 42 books. It doesn't exist. It's not even mawdu'a. There's not even a written element of it. If you can find it and read it with the sanad al-sahih, then you would have shut me up. But if you can't, you're going to have to apologize to the camera. Now everyone's seen your face. You're going to be humiliated in front of at least 20 or 30,000 people. Whatever your name is, everyone sees your face. Since you're the one who tried to come to me in Speaker's Corner and say that my prophet had foreplay with with Aisha at such an age. Now you're gonna run away. Yeah, you better run away. This is the thing. Look, so you are very dignified in your approach, and you are coming humbly.
Islamic website.
What Islam website? Give me a hadith number. Get me the book of hadith.
واحتجزوا أيضا بما روى
What's the hadith?
هاشم بن عروة عن عائشة أن النبي سلم تزوجها وبنت ال7 سنين.
What's that got to do with مفاخذة?
وبنت ال9 سنين.
طيب, where's مفاخذة?
شو مفاخذة؟
You said مفاخذة in front of the camera, أخي. مفاخذة means you're touching.
الفقهاء على أن عقد النكاح على الصغيرة صحيح ولو كان ذلك قبل بلوغها لقول تعالى لأن لن يحضن الطلاق.
واللائي لم يحضن.
لن يحضن.
لم. You can't speak, bro, you want to be Arab. Read it properly. You can't, it's your... Wallahi. Bro, you can't speak Arabic, you can't speak English. Please, keep to yourself. Look, you can't, I've asked you, where's Mufakhadha? Where's the Mufakhadha? Where's the Mufakhadha? Where's the Bana Biha wa bint 9 sanawat? Where's the say Mufakhadha? Huh? That's what I thought. Look at you, you're humiliated in front of my presence. That's right. Get all of your people. No, seriously, because you come in and saying that my prophet, he did mufakhadha with a woman, with a girl at a certain age. Now I've caught you like the boy that you are. You're finished. You are finished. You're finished in my presence, just like David Wood was finished. And that's why you... Yeah, he was finished. Listen, try your best, try it. I know it burns you. I know it burns the people. Look, I know it burns. All of you can come. You're finished. You're finished. Sorry, man, you're finished. You come, you tried your best. Who's next? Who's next? Are we done? Are we done here? No. He came to me saying that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did mufakhadha, which means, no, it means he done friction like touching the legs of a... Yeah. Now, I want to know. I've refuted it quite convincingly. So are you going to apologize in front of the camera, in front of the thousands of people who are watching, boy? Huh? Oh yeah. Keep looking. It's not there, brother. It's not there. Do you know what else is not there? Trinity in your Bible. That's what you should be looking about. Yeah, I know, because you come with the same people. Look. Look. It's finished. Anything else?
Yeah, just one verse.
You're okay. Sorry, I'm just humiliating him because he deserves the humiliation.
God can judge him.
No, I'll judge him. He's been humiliated, dejected, rejected, humiliated, embarrassed, and he's been put under my foot metaphorically today because he tried to come and say that Prophet al-Mufakhadha. So here, he's going to look all over the internet on Google. He's reading things he can't even. His mother tongue. I've been born and raised here, my man. I know it's your mother tongue, and you can't even read the Quran. Come on, man. Sorry, I'll come after. Afterwards. It's his mother tongue. حدثنا كذا وكذا كذا واللائي لم يحضن. Every single thing you couldn't read, and he's reading it. It's finished. You're finished.
This is the way
you
read your Quran.
Anything else?
This is the way you read your Quran.
That's what I thought. So now what hadith? Where does it say mufakhadha?
All this hadith.
Where's mufakhadha?
Do you want to ignore this?
Where's it? Read mufakhadha. I want to hear mufakhadha.
What is he doing with it?
Where's mufakhadha?
What he's doing with it?
Now where's mufakhadha? Get the evidence. Give the evidence.
What he's doing with it?
Nothing. He wasn't in the same house. Where's the evidence?
What you doing? No mufakhadha?
Yeah, no mufakhadha. Yeah. Where's the evidence? No. Where's the evidence? هاتوا برهانكم. قل هاتوا برهانكم كنتم صادقين. Bring your evidence if you are truthful. You know this Arab. You're Arab with no Arabi.
البخاري في
When he will bring the evidence,
they will say,
البخاري في صحيح عن عائشة رضي الله عنها زوجني النبي وانا بنت 6 سنين.
Where's the say مفاخذة?
تمزق شعري
وين مفاخذة؟
وارجوها.
So where's the same مفاخذة?
صحيح ان عائشة النبي تزوجها 7 سنين.
So where's مفاخذة؟
وسكن اما من جهة مفاخذة الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم لخطيبته عائشة فقد كانت في سن السادسة من
Where's the hadith? That's not hadith. That's not hadith.
Where's that?
No, it's not hadith. It's a Facebook post. That's a Facebook post on a Christian site. Akhi, you're finished. You are done. Where's the hadith?
السادسة من عمرها. معالي صغر سنها.
Where's the hadith?
كان الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يضع إربه.
Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. Get off here, brother. Get off here. It's over. So Where's the hadith? Where's the hadith? That's the first post.
You said
It's over, man. It's finished. So, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, look at that. Yeah, please look at it. Where's the mustard? Where's the mustard? Where's the hadith?
I read it to you.
What's up? Did you see website? It's a Facebook post. Yeah, who's that? Who's speaking?
Listen,
Aisha.
Who's speaking? Aisha saying أما من جهة المفاخذة بخطيبته عائشة. So Aisha speaking in the third person غائب. أخي, you don't know Arabic. Get out of here, man. You're finished. If it was her speaking, she would say in متكلم مفاخذته لي. She would say that. أخي, you don't know Arabic. Get out of here, man. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, he tried his best. And this, we look. Where is it? Where's the hadith? Where's the hadith? That's fine. He finished. It's done now. What can we say? Look, this is the reality of the situation. When these guys, they come to me, and they try their best to try and throw Rami of tuhamat and fabrications, they get crushed under the foot of the intellect.
This is your hadith.
You don't know how to read, man.
This
you have to speak English, brother.
This is your hadith.
Please, forget about Arabic. Please speak English first.
Yeah. This is your hadith.
Yeah.
He has read it.
Yeah, I don't know. What hadith? Go on. What's the sanad? Go on. What's the sanad? Look at his face.
Read it again.
Anyways, who's next, Akhi? I'm done with you, man.
Sharia then forbids that.
Forbids what?
Anything that's permissible within the Quran.
No, but by definition, Sharia is an attempt to understand the Quran.
Exactly,
Yeah, okay.
So I just note during the previous, not the conversation between you and I heard someone else saying that even though 65:4 says this, Sharia forbids marriage of underage
No. Okay, well that's a discussion that
I know,
you're right.
it was just
I'm a different person. What I'm saying to you is clear. Let me be clear. 65:4 وَلَا إِلَمْ يَحِدْ. Yeah? وَلَا إِلَمْ يَحِدْ, the ones who have never had menstruated before.
Yes.
If we say that this means that women, girls that are premature, that have not had periods before, yeah, we can accept this, no problem. Yeah, I'll accept that that interpretation. I'll say fine. But does it say in the verse that they can have sex with the man? It doesn't say that. As I said to you before, the Quran makes it explicitly clear in Surah
Permissible to marry without consummation.
No. It says that if in the Quran it says that if you have touched her, then you don't have to give her mahr back. In other words, her dowry back. If you haven't touched her, then and you divorce her, then you don't have to give her a mahr back. In other words, it's conceivable to marry and not touch. Yeah, and that is a form of marriage which existed. It's actually not a marriage. It's in vernacular terms, we would refer to it as a contract of some sort. So what I'm saying is this: it's not. Look, let me just. No problem.
No, it's the opposite. He's saying without sex.
Yeah, so I'm saying without sex. Exactly. Thank you very much. Someone who understands a little bit of what I'm trying to say. So here, no, it's fine. Just leave him. He's a young man. Obviously all the ladies are very attracted to him.
Thank you.
Very attracted. Now,
Lying is a sin.
oh yeah, sorry. No. Some women are definitely. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Okay, so having said that, what I'm trying to say is this: is that so when the Quran says "Wallahi lam yahid," this is that if we put Jam'a Adillah, or put all the dalils together, which we have to do as part of the method, then you'll find that the Quran says, yes, the ones who have never had, but it also says, the hadith says, وَلَا ضَرَرَ وَلَا ضِرَارَ, which is the qaida, which means you can't harm or reciprocate harm, which is the principle that everyone uses to say that you can't have intercourse with someone who's prepubescent or unable. The second thing they use is they use the fact that Prophet waited before he did it with Aisha. So what's the point of the wait?
Are we assuming that Aisha had menstruated by the time she was 8/9?
She was not. She wasn't 8. No. It says 9 in the hadith.
She says 8 in brackets.
I was playing with the dog.
No. Can I add something?
I
think this matters.
Sorry, my
However,
you've spent a lot of time
yeah, of course.
explaining. Thank you very much.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yep.
But why is there no? I mean, you can't know the mind of God, but why is there no category within 65:4 for those marriages that don't contain sexual relations?
Because
it's just about categories.
okay, so
not types.
We had this discussion before. There's some things that are not like the Quran is like the Constitution. The Quran is like the Constitution, and the Hadith is like the laws.
So it expects
right. So what? You need elaboration. That's why I say to Quran alone. I actually made this argument that you're making. I said that if you only took a Quranic understanding, then it would be permissible for you to have sex with minors.
Yes.
The only way to get away from that is to have hadith expansion.
Yes.
If you only took the Quran, you're right. If the Quran was the only thing, I have a video on this with Quran loaners. If you only looked at the Quran, based on the verse in the Quran 65:4,
yes,
it would be permissible to have sex with minors. But what I'm saying is that we don't just take Quran. So we take Quran and hadith. And as a result of that, because of the actions of the Prophet and his saying that you can't harm anyone, the jurists have said, for example, I've mentioned Mirdawi in his book Al-Insaf and his chapter of Hudud. He mentions anyone who has sex with someone who's under the age of puberty.
Within marriage, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, within marriage. They're whipped.
Okay.
So in other words, they're flogged in public.
Yeah.
Now there's a question, the scholars, he said the Hanbali scholars, they differed. Some said that they are whipped and some said they're not whipped. The point is this, is that why is he talking about punishment in marriage? So this is something, what I'm saying is Islam is actually the only religion, in my understanding, especially of the Abrahamic religions, which makes it so explicitly clear that in fact having intercourse with unable people, whether they be minors or not, by the way, because there can be someone who's mentally ill, or by the way, like in the law now, can I ask you a question? If I wanted to have sex with a 75-year-old, me,
that's legal.
It's legal. But if I guarantee if I had sex with a 70, sorry, but not for me. So if someone,
to be fair,
okay, you're saying yourself. Okay.
I don't mean.
No.
I mean,
listen, what I'm saying is, but is it illegal?
No,
it's haram though. So. It's haram. If I went and married,
so is eating pork, and that's not illegal.
What I'm saying is that
I understand your point.
the one size fits all policy of 15, 16. And by the way, I don't care about that. I'm not even against the age of consent, but I'm saying that it should be more nuanced. I'm saying that.
No, 16 is quite.
Look, no problem.
Right.
I'm saying it's more nuanced in a sense.
Yeah, over 16 and without the emotional capacity. That's
no problem. No problem.
I know, yeah,
I'm saying that. Look, in the day and age we live in now, I would posit to you, and I made this argument before with Ali. We said that look, because there's more than one factor. Qudra is a matter of ijtihad. Qudra, which means ability.
Yes.
It's a matter of ijtihad means. So what ijtihad means? Scholarly ability and to discern. Right.
So there's a lower and upper limit when it's generically acceptable. Sexual relations.
Just one thing, and then Ali's going to say something.
But my other question. So earlier you suggested that the Quran in some places only needs exegesis and the scholars come together, and you said some Arabic words and they come together. So I'm asking over time then. So at the time of the Prophet, obviously there weren't huge schools of Islamic thought or scholars. There were just the companions and believers. So as time goes on, and you mentioned the law in this country, I'm assuming, of consent. Do those, obviously they're human, but do you imagine that those things are heavily influencing their scholarly...
100%. And they should do as well.
Yeah.
Because here's what people don't understand. Here's what people don't understand about, and this is what I wanted to say to you before you... here's what I want to say to you. Look, every environment is different, okay? The Islamic law is not a rock, in the sense that it's unmalleable, unflexible, and...
It's like science in that respect.
In a sense, there is a degree of elasticity, and that's what usul is all about. Is to see, okay, what works well in this situation? What counts as harm in this situation? What counts as necessity in this situation? And the answer to that question is different. So for me now, if I bring someone, my man, I say, look, we go to a primary school, year 6, year 5, year 6. If we go, year 5, year 6, 10, 11-year-olds, If we go to those ages, and I promise you, anywhere in London, anywhere in the UK, are any of these kids ready for marriage? Absolutely not. But the thing is, you don't know about a million years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Because believe me, it's happening now.
They have sex behind the bushes.
But they're not ready for marriage.
No.
They don't go off and get married.
But me and you agree on this, yeah? Alright, so me and you agree on this. Why? The reason why is, listen to this. We would both say that it contradicts their ability,
emotionally.
So it would harm them.
Yes.
Okay, anything that harms anybody is not allowed.
They end up married.
Yeah, it's not allowed. All right, so if it's because the qaida that we have, which is similar to a liberal thing, is
the primary thing that we would agree on is because it's sinful. So God ordains that man and woman should join together.
This is what I say to you. Look, this is what I call Sharia consequentialism. Because the question, why is it wrong to have sex with a 1-year-old? Forget about.
I'd explain that. I'd say physically it's damaging.
Perfect.
Morally it's disgusting. Within the context of God's law, God does not prescribe that in any way.
All right, but even if we had that out of the picture for a second,
it's morally.
Jesus does in the Old Testament though.
No, we won't talk about it.
Please don't talk to me.
Okay, forget about Jesus for now. I'm just sorry to say, but we love Jesus as well.
Apparently.
No, we do.
But it's Isa.
Aisha, it's the same person, but it's just a different name. Yes. Listen,
No, I'll debate you on that another time.
another time. Another day, another discussion.
Another Sunday.
All right, but what I was going to say to you is that, look, if you're saying it's wrong, primarily because of the harm, the consequences of it, right?
Because
Okay.
I have the mental capacity
So
to
okay,
look at that and judge
perfect.
that.
No, I totally agree with you, right? So what I'm saying is that if this, we would call it causative reasoning, did not exist, then it wouldn't be wrong.
No, if nobody ever saw the wrong in something.
Perfect. So it's consequentially wrong.
Well,
It's wrong as-
intrinsically wrong because it's a gut reaction as well. You
Fine.
would say that's disgusting.
But
you saw
if
that
you can
in-
intuit something which is consequentially wrong, something which is intuitively wrong is not always it's not
they
always
don't
categorically
always
wrong.
match,
Now you can
but
have something.
they
Let me
can.
explain. You can have something which is intuitively wrong, but consequentially, right? You can have something.
It's intuitively right for drug
Right,
addicts to take drugs,
but
that
it's
doesn't mean
consequentially
everybody
wrong, which means it's
will.
wrong because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and
All
because
right.
it's physically
You can
harming.
explain why.
Yes.
Right. Now I'm saying that with that explanation, I agree with you. If you don't have that explanation, then we say it's not wrong anymore. Therefore, what I'm positing to you is a scientific approach. I'm saying to you that if the person's age is 15, it could be wrong, depending on that person. If she's 16, it could be wrong.
I'm talking legally then. We're
No.
just
I'm talking morally. Morally, look. If you got a 16-year-old, I'm saying it could be wrong. And it could be right.
Yeah.
Depending on that person's.
on the age of the man as well.
Not only just that, but that person themselves,
I
right?
mean, a
It could be wrong.
7-year-old
It could be wrong.
man
It could be wrong. Right. Depends on what the variables. Yeah. Depends on if it harms them or not.
But legally,
Do you agree?
Yes, legally we decide that a minimum age.
But legally is a different story, right? Because
Okay,
that's the
but
democratic
civilly,
reasoning.
Within society, we have
Fine.
all decided that 16 is the lower age.
No
limit.
problem.
Before that,
In
it's
this
rape. It's not even a question
Yeah,
of...
that's in this country, by the way.
Yes, and there are other countries that have chosen 15,
14,
whatever,
12,
12.
yeah, no problem. So having said what I'm trying
Some
to say,
places don't have any age.
yeah, exactly, no problem. So what I'm saying to you is this: is that if you say it's wrong because of the harm factor, perfect, yeah. I'm saying to you, I agree with you. Look, Islam agrees with you. Yeah, Islam agrees with you. So I'm saying, so long as that cause is not there no more, then we can't say it's wrong no more, is it?
Each of us is a scientist to approach a relationship
But,
and
look,
say, I see that girl will be
It's not always a
harmed
but it's not always a
or
scientific thing.
emotionally harmed because you don't yet know that
But
when
society is decided, like you said.
Yes.
So
After years of trial and error
can I ask you a question? Because if you really think about the, when did this change? It changed in 1929, yeah?
Yeah.
When you had the marriage act change from 12 to
previously, within
15.
Victorian times, women didn't menstruate anyway until around
No
17.
problem. But the point is, here's what I'm saying to you. Before the year 1929, before that legal paradigm shift,
18, wasn't it?
no, it was 12 years old, yeah? If you look at the Marriage Act 1929, it was 12 years old. Before that time, what I'm saying to you is that, was it the case that all women that were having intercourse at that age were harmed?
I would suggest yes.
All of them,
Just
100%.
psychologically.
No, that's not correct. It's just, there's no evidence for that.
You can't prove the opposite.
No,
because you
it's
don't know
not.
all of those women.
The burden of proof is on the one who's making the claim.
You are making the claim.
No, I'm making it.
You're asking the question, were they all damaged? And I would say, okay, on the whole. Maybe some who were 15,
No, but that's a claim.
Some who were 15 years old and 364 days, maybe they were fine.
No. So
But
that's
I'm
a ridiculous claim.
I'm saying, in general,
Yeah.
girls under 16 are not emotionally
Not in general,
or
it's
physically
fine.
ready to
But
have
what-
a baby. And sex leads to babies because 18
but-
years old, you're physiologically, you've stopped
But listen,
growing. Your womb is full.
you're still thinking ahistorically.
No, I'm not saying it didn't happen.
No, but I'm not saying that
That would
either.
be
I'm saying to you, look, if you get an 11-year-old's testimony in the year
They may
1905,
say it's absolutely great. They may say, I got to leave home, I got to go off with this guy, but that doesn't mean it hasn't damaged them, and that damage may not come out until they're in their 40s.
No, but then
Then have
if you're
therapy
saying
and say that guy
if you're
abused
no problem. But if you're saying that is the case, that there was wide-scale epidemic harm of women because of that, or men for that matter, then what you have to.
We're having up to 10 children in those.
No, but
days,
I
so that's
understand.
physically
But
damaging in
can I just
itself.
finish this point? The point is that.
I'll never have a baby, so I don't know what you're putting
So,
I've had one. I know it's quite damaging.
no problem. You have kids, but one.
I do, but they're
listen to me.
infrequent.
What I'm saying is, you can't possibly prove that all women under the age of 16
No,
are damaged.
I can't.
All right. Now, so having said that,
they're all dead.
if you go to what you have to do as a historian, then is let me give you or someone a
go
tip.
to Contemporary references.
Okay.
And
Do you mind if I just finish the sentence, please?
Oh, you've been going for ages. Go on.
Now, just let me finish the sentence, and then you can say what you want. What I'm saying is this: is that if you wanted to do a historical project, which is done in many universities in London, in the UK, in the US, and in the Western world, the effects of let's say pre-teen marriage, for the sake of argument, the effects of pre-teen marriage, on women or girls or whatever, on females, use neutral language.
Do you suppose that within those societies that
Can I just finish?
I'm just an addendum. Do you find that in those societies where it's permissible, they're going to do any studies on them?
No, just let me finish what I'm saying. You would have to, like what I'm telling you, what you would do academically.
Yeah.
You'd make.
I'm studying it. I know what to do academically.
No, I'm giving you an example, right? So you'd have something like the effects of preteen marriage on X society and on females in X society from time X to time Y. Then you'd have to go and get micro historical reports of like diary entries and stuff. I was so harmed and whatever. Now I'm saying to you that, look, if you can produce this evidence and actually take into consideration the counter.
Produce the evidence for all, because that's the part.
That's the point. That's impossible, right? Exactly.
But that's why you asked the question.
Oh, brilliant. So we come to a conclusion now. So if it's not all, then it's conceivable possibly that 1,000 years ago, that a 9-10-year-old would not be harmed in these ways. That's conceivable. That's all I'm saying. That's all we're saying.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Hope this video was helpful for you. This may help others too, so please consider sharing, and we will bring more videos in the future, inshallah. So consider subscribing and you won't miss any. Jazakallahu khairan.